Back with us now on America's Forum. We welcome you back, and I welcome in one of my favorite guys. Back when I served in Congress, always enjoyed both his depth of knowledge and his covering of Capitol Hill. He continues to cover Washington for Newsmax.com. That's our good friend John Gizzi, who is Skyping in from the nation's capital. John, we are going to get to some of the intrigue surrounding this ongoing dispute in Mississippi in just a little while. In fact, with apologies to the motion picture of the same name of years ago, perhaps we would describe it as Mississippi Burning. Yet there is a report that almost Phoenix-like Mitt Romney is prepared to rise from the ashes of his 2012 campaign. Congressman Jason Chaffetz on MSNBC yesterday says that Mitt Romney is going to run and in 2016 is going to win. John Gizzi, you've been around politics for a long time. Do you think there's anything to this Romney talk for 2016?
Well, that great philosopher Casey Stengel once said, never make predictions, especially about the future. I don't find myself often agreeing with White House Press Secretary Josh Earnest, but when he was asked a question yesterday about the Democratic side of the race, he said, wait a minute, there's a race going on in 2014 already that President Obama is focused on. Don't ask about 16. That said, the history of the Republican Party in giving a second nomination to someone who didn't win is very, very slim. The last was Tom Dewey, governor of New York, who lost to FDR in 1944 and then lost to Harry Truman in 1948. Republicans usually pass over someone once they've run, or in the case of Richard Nixon, let them sit out a while. With all due respect to Congressman Chaffetz, Mitt Romney has stirred up some controversy within the party. Some like him. They say he would probably easily defeat Barack Obama today. Others say the Republican Party's problem is turning back to faces from the past, and it's time to go with a new crop of candidates, of which the party has in abundance. My guess is he won't do it in the end.
John Gizzi, as you mentioned, Tom Dewey in back-to-back runs in 44 and 48. There's also a case to be made. Richard Nixon ran in 60 and lost. He came back in 68. And, of course, we saw Ronald Reagan mentioned in 68. He took kind of a step into the water but stood back, then challenged Jerry Ford in 76 and won in 1980. But there is an interesting prevailing wisdom in the Republican Party typified by longtime candidate, manager, and consultant Ed Rollins. At our parent site, Newsmax.com, Ed spoke out about a potential presidential run by Dr. Ben Carson, saying, quote, "It's no place for amateurs." Now, Ed was very courteous, talking about the intellectual heft and sophistication that Dr. Ben Carson brings to public policy debate. But to say, hey, forget about it, pal, you're an amateur, that's pretty strong stuff.
Well, I would say this. Ed Rollins is not known for being shy and not known for editing his remarks ahead of time. And if you're watching Ed, you know I've told you that before, like the time I drove you to the train station after the Christian Science Monitor breakfast. Now, all things considered, JD, remember something. It is an historical fact that Americans do like their president to have held some major elective or appointive office, as in the case of Dwight Eisenhower commanding the largest armada in the history of the world during D-Day. It is very rare that someone is nominated who has neither held nor sought elective office before. The last one was, of course, Wendell Willkie in 1940 from Indiana, and then a corporate lawyer in New York, and a Democrat up until a year before he sought the Republican nomination. That was a case of lightning in the bottle. I have a great deal of respect for Dr. Ben Carson. He's one of the best speakers the Republican Party has, and he's from Maryland. I wish he would run there, build a party up, and then make his plunge for national office.
Is it conceivable that if, I hate to use the term professional politicians or experienced candidates, if an experienced candidate gets the nomination, do you think Dr. Carson would be thought about for the number 2 spot on the ticket nationally?
I think he might. But again, I've heard this going back many, many years, even before I was a political writer. There was always talk in the 1960s, for example, if Barry Goldwater was nominated, would he pick someone such as retired General Loris Norstad? There was talk of someone from the cabinet, such as William Simon, the Secretary of the Treasury, going on as a running mate. It doesn't even happen in those cases. And in the end, it's usually two seasoned people who have been in the political arena for a while.
A little more than 2 minutes left, John Gizzi. Let's get to Mississippi, that primary between incumbent Thad Cochran and State Senator Chris McDaniel. The dispute continues. What's your take on what's transpiring in Mississippi?
It's almost a cottage industry for me, or at the very least a part-time job. It seems every other day there's a new development. Right now, Senator Cochran is about to be certified by the Mississippi State Republican Party as the winner of the Republican nomination for the U.S. Senate by about 7,000 votes out of 625,000 cast. He defeated State Senator Chris McDaniel, a Tea Party hero, in the runoff earlier this month. Now, Mr. McDaniel has not gone gently into the night. He is trying to get a court to overturn those results because he says more people voted who previously voted in the Democratic primary and are barred by law from coming over into the Republican runoff. Camp Cochran says that's baloney, that there's nowhere near that amount, and history at this point favors Senator Cochran. It is very rare, in fact almost out of the question, that courts will interfere in what Justice Frankfurter called the political thicket and tell a political party to run a primary all over again. Mr. McDaniel may have a good argument. He's got a stiff Sisyphusian climb ahead of him.
Whoa, Sisyphusian, that's right. Hey, before we go, a Sisyphusian task here in a short period of time. $3.3 million, according to Trey Gowdy and the other Republicans investigating Benghazi. Nancy Pelosi is attacking that. $3.3 million too much for this? About 20 seconds, John.
Tell that to the people on the Watergate Committee, Senator Ervin and Senator Baker, at this point in 1974. Tell that to the people who ran the Iran-Contra investigation in the twilight days of the Reagan administration, when that amount and more were being spent, and ask them if they thought it was worthwhile then.
And we will leave it right there. John Gizzi, we appreciate your insights and analysis. Skyping in from Washington, D.C., America's Forum continues.